Right now, there is a synthetic chemical called PFOS, a forever chemical, in your blood. You did not eat it on purpose. You did not inject it. You did not sign anything consenting to it. It got there through your tap water, your food packaging, the non-stick pan you scrambled eggs in this morning, the stain-resistant carpet under your feet. And the company that put it there knew it was happening for 50 years. This is the story of Kris Hansen, a chemist, a daughter, the woman who found the proof, and what happened when she brought it to her bosses. They already knew. It is 1997. Kris Hansen is 28 years old. She has a PhD in chemistry from the University of Colorado. She just joined 3M, one of the most powerful manufacturing companies on Earth, headquartered 20 miles from where she grew up. Her father spent 40 years at 3M. He helped invent the N95 mask. She trusted this company the way most people trust the water coming out of their taps. Her boss, a researcher named Jim Johnson, hands her an assignment. Test human blood samples. Look for a compound called PFOS, perfluorooctane sulfonic acid. One of a family of synthetic chemicals 3M had been manufacturing since 1947 for products like Scotchgard, firefighting foam, and food packaging coatings. Simple enough. She runs the tests. Every single sample comes back positive. She tests blood bank donations from across the country. Positive. She gets her hands on historical samples from Korean War veterans collected in the 1950s. Clean. No PFOS. She tests recent samples from rural China. Clean. But every modern American sample she can find, positive. PFOS had arrived in the American bloodstream at exactly the moment 3M started selling it in consumer products. She takes the data to Jim Johnson. He looks at the numbers. He goes quiet. He says, "This changes everything." Then he walks into his office and closes the door. Now, before we go any further, you need to understand what PFOS actually is, because this is not a story about a chemical that turned out to be mildly inconvenient. PFAS chemicals, the family PFOS belongs to, are built around something called a carbon-fluorine bond. It is one of the strongest chemical bonds in nature. It does not break down in soil. It does not break down in water. It does not break down inside your body. Once PFOS gets into your bloodstream, its half-life is 3 to 7 years. Half of what is in your blood right now will still be there in the early 2030s. The other half, the late 2030s. This is why they are called forever chemicals, not as a metaphor, as a chemical fact. And by 1997, they were in the blood of nearly every American alive. As of December 2024, the CDC confirmed that PFAS is detectable in the blood of over 98% of all Americans tested. A 2023 government study found these chemicals in approximately 45% of US tap water. 98%. You are almost certainly in that number. So is everyone you love. Back to Kris Hansen, back to the closed door. In the weeks that follow, something strange starts happening. Her supervisors begin questioning her equipment. Maybe the instruments are contaminated. Maybe the test itself is flawed. An epidemiologist named Geary Olson arrives with a fresh set of blood vials for blind testing. The implication is clear. Prove the test, not the contamination. She runs the blind tests. Every vial comes back positive. In early 1999, Hansen is invited to present her findings to 3M CEO. His name is Livio D. De Simone. She stands at the front of the conference room. She lays out the data. PFOS is in the blood of the general American population. It was not there in the 1950s. It arrived when 3M started selling Scotchgard. The CEO fell asleep, sat at the head of the table, eyes closed, while a chemist told him his company had poisoned the country. Hansen was reassigned out of the environmental lab shortly after. She avoided fluorochemicals for the next 20 years. She kept working at 3M until 2022. 25 years, watching, waiting, saying nothing. But here is what makes this story something else entirely, what Kris Hansen did not know, what nobody told her. Jim Johnson, the man who handed her the assignment in 1997, had personally developed a method for detecting PFOS in biological fluid back in 1991, 6 years earlier. He had written a report about it and sent it to his own boss, Dale Bacon. They already knew what she was going to find. They gave it to the new chemist as if it were an open question. But it gets worse. 3M had run a mouse study in 1950 showing PFAS accumulated in blood, 47 years before Hansen ran her test. In 1963, a 3M technical manual described the chemicals as toxic. In 1976, a rat study at 3M's Cottage Grove plant in Minnesota killed 7 of 10 animals within 2 weeks of PFOS exposure. In 1979, a rhesus monkey study was terminated at day 20 because every monkey at every dose level was dead. A 1992 internal study of workers at Cottage Grove found a 3-fold increase in prostate cancer mortality for workers with 10 or more years in PFOA production. None of this was disclosed to regulators. None of it was shared with the public. None of it stopped 3M from producing more than £1 million of PFOS-related chemicals per year at their Decatur, Alabama plant in 1997 alone. There was one man who saw all of this clearly, and he decided he could not stay. His name was Richard Purdy, ecotoxicologist. He had been at 3M since 1981. For years he had been finding PFOS in places it should never have been. In bald eaglets, in albatross blood, in the tissue of marine mammals thousands of miles from any manufacturing plant. The chemical was moving up food chains, concentrating as it went. What scientists call biomagnification. What it means in plain language is this: the higher up the food chain you go, the worse it gets. Purdy asked 3M management for authorization to do more sampling. No. He escalated. On March 28, 1999, Richard Purdy resigned. He sent his letter directly to the EPA. It said, "PFOS is the most insidious pollutant since PCB. It is probably more damaging than PCB because it does not degrade. 3M continues to make and sell these chemicals, though the company knows of an ecological risk assessment I did that indicates there is a better than 100% probability that PFOS is biomagnifying in the food chain and harming sea mammals." 2 days before that letter, in an internal email he wrote, "For 20 years the division has been stalling the collection of data needed for evaluating the environmental impact of fluorochemicals. I am outraged." 3M kept manufacturing, but in 2000 they quietly phased out PFOS and replaced it with newer chemicals like Gen X and PFBS. These replacement chemicals? They remain in the environment indefinitely too. But 400 miles south of Minnesota, something else was already in motion. A cattle farmer in Parkersburg, West Virginia, named Wilbur Tennant, had been watching his animals die for years. Clouded white eyes, blackened teeth, deformed calves. He had videotaped hundreds of hours of it. Nobody believed him. In October 1998, he made a long-shot call to a Cincinnati attorney named Rob Bilott. Bilott had spent his career defending chemical companies. He was exactly the wrong person to call. He found DuPont. Since 1951, DuPont had been buying a chemical from 3M called PFOA and using it to manufacture Teflon at their plant in Parkersburg. They discharged it into the Ohio River, into the air, into the groundwater. Their own internal documents described it as, and I'm quoting directly, "The material 3M sells us that we poop to the river and into drinking water along the Ohio River." They wrote that down. In January 1981, a woman named Sue Bailey was working the Teflon line at the Parkersburg plant when her son was born. His name was Bucky. He arrived with one nostril, a deformed eye, a keyhole-shaped pupil. DuPont's internal records flagged him the same month as child, 4 months. A separate memo showed 2 of 8 babies born to women in the Teflon division that year had eye defects. DuPont quietly moved pregnant workers out of that division. They told no one why. Bucky Bailey has since had somewhere between 30 and 40 reconstructive surgeries. Bilott filed a class action in 2001 on behalf of 70,000 residents in 6 contaminated water districts. The settlement created an independent science panel called the C8 Science Panel that spent 7 years studying those 70,000 people. In 2012, they published their findings. PFOA exposure was more likely than not causally linked to kidney cancer, testicular cancer, thyroid disease, ulcerative colitis, high cholesterol, pregnancy-induced hypertension. In November 2023, the International Agency for Research on Cancer classified PFOA as a Group 1 human carcinogen. The same category as asbestos, the same category as tobacco smoke. Definitive. The legal reckoning for 3M specifically started in 2010 when the Minnesota Attorney General filed suit for natural resource damages from PFAS contamination of East Metro groundwater serving more than 170,000 people. The case settled in February 2018 on the morning jury selection was set to begin. 3M paid $850 million. It was the 3rd largest natural resource damages recovery in US history. The settlement required the unsealing of internal documents. Those documents confirmed everything, date by date, study by study, every suppressed finding, every dead monkey, every worker with cancer. Every year they kept selling. Then in June 2023, 3M agreed to pay up to $10.3 billion to American public water utilities. Judge Richard Gergel approved the settlement on March 29, 2024. $10.3 billion. No 3M executive has been charged with a crime. No admission of wrongdoing was required. Meanwhile, DuPont spun off its PFAS liabilities to a company called Chemist in 2015. Both companies remain locked in ongoing litigation over cleanup costs that could stretch decades. Kris Hansen went public in May 2024. She told ProPublica, "For most of my life, certainly for my career at 3M, I believed 3M's line that they were not toxic. I feel guilty. I feel disappointed. I feel angry." ProPublica titled their investigation "Toxic Gaslighting." Rob Bylett's fight against DuPont became the 2019 film Dark Waters, starring Mark Ruffalo. The carbon-fluorine bond does not break. It is in the water. It is in the soil. It is in the blood of more than 98% of every American ever tested. It has been building since 1947, and it is not leaving on any timeline that matters to any living person. 3M knew in 1950. They knew in 1963. They knew in 1976 when the rats died. They knew in 1979 when every monkey was dead. They knew in 1997 when Kris Hansen walked into that lab and found their chemical in the blood of the entire country. The CEO fell asleep. If this video made you angry, good. That means it worked. Subscribe, because there are a lot more stories like this one, and most people have never heard a single one of them.